Welcome to the Evolve, Move, Play podcast, where we bring you the most interesting and enlightening conversations around movement practice and how you can become the most heroic version of yourself through pursuing movement that's relevant to your nature. This is a podcast that's going to feature some of the top movers in the world, some of the most amazing movement thinkers, and people from fields that are related to movement as far afield as evolutionary theory, strength and conditioning, and everything in between. So if you're interested in movement, please stick around. And if you like our work and want to support it, please consider supporting us on Patreon, because this podcast is completely listener supported. We don't want to take any advertising. We don't want to interrupt your experience of watching the show. So what really helps us get the best thinkers on, have the time to put these together, have the best quality for you guys as far as audio and video is your support. So please consider supporting us and enjoy the rest of the show. Today, our guest is Callum Powell. Callum is one of the members of Storror. Storror is right now the world's most popular YouTube channel for parkour. They're a clothing brand, and they're well known in particular for their work at heights and their long, complex runs using parkour techniques. So Callum's a guy I wanted to chat with to get a view into how people at the highest levels of the sport currently training and kind of the mental game that goes into some of the aspects of training at height. So I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, and I think you guys will get a lot out of it. So without further ado, Callum Powell. Callum, welcome on the podcast. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
What's up, man? Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
So let's just start with, like, how did you get started with Storror? This has become I believe you're the biggest YouTube channel for parkour content on the planet. How'd that all get started?
Yeah. So I guess how it got started was, Max and Benj started the channel Storror blog on the 10th of October 2010, so 10-10-10. And they kind of started it as a side YouTube account from Horsham Movement. Horsham is where Max, Benj and Drew are from in England. And it's where they wanted to pretty much upload all the fun stuff besides training, pretty much. Like all their main videos went on Horsham Movement, and all the bullshit went on Storror blog. And it kept going like that for quite a while. And as we were all kind of training together, we were all kind of around, and we were all in the videos that were just being uploaded to Storror blog. And as time went on, less and less videos were uploaded to Horsham Movement and our own channels, and we were more just all of us uploading stuff to Storror blog instead. And then as time went on, we were uploading more glossier content just on Storror blog. And down the line, people started just calling us the Storrors or the Storror boys. Mm-hmm. And before we knew it, we were just like a team. Like the public just decided that we were like a parkour team, pretty much. And yeah, there was the 8 of us for quite a while. Steve in 2014 or something, who's like the older member of the group, he decided to step down. He had a kid, which is the reason he stepped down, and decided he was going to try and pursue a career in stunt work. So he was doing a lot of work to try and get on the stunt register. And yeah, I guess we've just been putting a lot of effort into YouTube, and we started making clothing, and yeah, I guess the rest is history. Now we've just hit 3 million subscribers on YouTube. We got a fair few viral videos, and things have just been snowballing exponentially. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Where we're at right now, I guess.
So you said you're 27 years old. You're 19 when you guys started this. Have you been training for a while before that?
Yeah, I started in 2006. I was 15 when I started.
Okay.
yeah, and I met the other Storror guys in like 2008, around then, but we only really like started training together more as a group, like as our actual, like we all lived like a fair distance apart from each other, maybe like an hour. Probably doesn't sound much for you guys in the US where everything's so spaced out, but yeah, we'd always meet up on the weekends, and we were like our main training group kind of thing.
So did you guys come together primarily because to find people of kind of similar skill level, or was there a personality match, or why do you guys think that you all ended up training together?
I think it was literally the personality match. Yeah, that's the thing for sure. Yeah, it definitely wasn't so much the skill level. Like we all just had a similar drive for like certain adventures and stuff like that. And I think like our sense of humor as well was like a big part of like our friendship, like and why like things kind of worked better than other stuff. I don't know. We were all just like kind of on the same wave of adventure and humor and what we wanted to do with parkour kind of thing, and it just kind of worked.
Yeah, I remember when you guys first came out, there was a lot of controversy around you guys.
Yeah. Still it hasn't really stopped.
We'll get into that a little bit later, but the humor aspect was a big aspect, I think, of what made your brand somewhat distinctive.
Yeah, I think like because around the time it was just a lot of people uploading like action reels and there'd be like just training videos and stuff, but we just uploaded like random bullshit. Like some of the first videos were like 20-second videos of just like complete nonsense, and like there'd be sometimes very little parkour, and there'd be like lots of our like interactions with like members of the public and police and stuff, and just lots of like funny content. And I remember like people like Phil Doyle around that time saying like Storror blog is pretty much like the only parkour content that I watch these days, and it's like, okay. yeah and it's like, well, I don't know if you can call it parkour content. A lot of it's just like, yeah, I don't know, just like funny content that we thought was funny. Like it didn't matter about anyone else too much at that point.
And you kind of carved a bit of a distinct sort of style within Storror and within the community, as kind of particularly known for big jumps and precisions and doing stuff where you'd easily die if you didn't land precisely.
Oh yeah.
How do you think you kind of ended up focusing on that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't remember any like distinct point where I decided like, oh, this is my thing, I want to specialize in this. It just like naturally kind of happened, and especially not like the high consequence stuff. Like nothing, like there was never any point where I decided this is what I want to do. I just like, I don't know, I just always thought like precisions, jumps, power moves with like good control and everything was cool, so I just gravitated towards it, I guess. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. And well, one of the things that's interesting to me about Storror is just that like most of the most popular parkour content is very acrobatics biased, but you guys are the biggest most popular channel and one of the least acrobatic biased teams, right?
Yeah, I feel like that as well. Yeah. And especially as time goes on, like I think most of us have like come away from like acrobatic stuff as time goes on, and I don't know why. Like we were talking about it recently. Like Josh used to do so many more flips, like back in 2010 to 2012 or something. And Benj recently said as well, like, yeah, I'm not so much into flips anymore. Like, but I think he had like quite a bad bail recently where like he hurt his back for like the whole of the summer, so that might be a part of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird to think why, because I always kind of thought like the general public want to see people doing backflips.
It's
Not
certainly
even like
something
hard
else we can
acrobatic stuff, just
do.
backflips.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, they can't tell the difference between a backflip and a corkscrew. So
Yeah. I've no idea why that's the thing.
so that wasn't something you guys intentionally sort of set out to do, was to be focused on that, or just organically grew that was what you continued to be interested in?
Yeah, it was definitely organic. I don't remember. There was never any decision or anything. It's just we always did what we thought was cool.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I think it's cool too. I love the fact that there's somewhere out there that you can watch like really nicely produced content that's much more about the interaction with the environment.
Yeah, that's a big thing as well. Like, that's one thing I can definitely say I'm not that into, especially when I'm watching parkour content, would be people just doing stuff on sprung floor or like platform tricks and stuff. I love seeing people that are acrobatic, but that are interacting with their environment in like cool and creative ways.
Yeah,
like that come to like a really complex environment and they can, I don't know, just put their kind of mark on it, kind of thing, and interpret it in a way, rather than just like the hardest platform trick off a ledge or something.
it does seem like for a while I got
motion runs.
Yeah.
Well,
I got really sick of the kind of free running because it seemed like
run here, flip here, run here, flip here.
Yeah, it was like a lot of flat ground tricking basically, or flipping off of something just because it just provided a platform. It didn't provide something that was more intriguing.
Yeah.
But
like it didn't matter. It didn't matter if you traveled to like Madrid or something, go to like amazing spots. You would just like find a ledge to do a trick off, and it's just like,
yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, yeah, exactly. Like I remember watching like some pretty prestigious free running videos and being like, they're in some of the coolest environments in the world, and it looks exactly the same as if they were doing the same stuff at their home spots. Because you know, doing a double B twist off of one platform is the same as doing a double B twist off the next platform.
Yeah. Although I sometimes feel myself falling into that category as well, but in a different way. Like you could say doing like a big running precision is the same kind of thing. That's like you go to a spot and then there's just like an obvious big running jump, and I'll spend a lot of time doing that. And often like feel to myself like, this isn't like, I'm not doing justice to this spot kind of thing. I've just like found an obvious thing, and I'm kind of, so it can be like, it doesn't just have to be acrobatic stuff, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I mean? No, that's a good point. I do think that for me there's a little bit of a difference there, because you know it's the big running precision. It's like, well, how high, how far, how creepy.
True.
There's these little variations. I feel like
different factors.
You know, and obviously that can be true with flips too. It's like, well, if the platform's a little bit higher, the timing is different. And, you know, what's the ground like, etc. But what I was going to say is, I do think that you've seen the free running game change, where it's becoming much more environmentally interesting. Like I think one of my friends, former students, Nate Weston. Like I think he does.
Oh yeah. Of course. Yeah. Seattle based.
Yeah, and also I really like Bar Vanderlyn in the way that he combines the two things and connects.
Yeah, for sure.
I've actually been kind of diving into acrobatics myself as part of my my kind of investigation into how we conceptualize and think about flow. But one of the things I'm interested in is how you challenge the orientation system and then learn to control coming out of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, you can do a flip on flat, but then can you do the flip in connection between parkour elements? And it can make the connection between those elements that much more interesting. So can you do your long running precision, but can you do a flip before you do it, or a flip on the way out and then connect to something else? And that's where it gets interesting.
Something I'm trying to experiment with more and more now. But
So let's talk about your big jumps, right? You're one of the things that's very interesting to me is the idea of breaking the jump and the process that an athlete goes through in breaking the jump. So take us through, what is your process when you're looking at a new kind of a big scary jump and you're preparing for it? What do you go through?
Yeah, I don't know. I pretty much first of all, like, check the surfaces and everything. Well, not check the surfaces. Obviously, I'll try and find out if it's actually a jump that I can do, like, physically, and then I'll make sure the surfaces are safe and not like slippery and everything, all of the obvious things. And then if there's still like doubt or anything, I'll try and replicate it in any way possible, whether that be on the ground. I'm not really against like measuring stuff. Like if I need to be sure about something, and if I think most of the time you can learn more about yourself by measuring stuff than, like, it doesn't actually take anything away.
I think there's an interesting thing. I was going to ask you about that, but there's an idea to me of, so implicit versus explicit. So implicit is like, I know I can do that jump. Explicit would be like, I can jump 10 feet. That's 10 feet. Therefore I can do it. Right. So it's like, it's a rational, logical program.
Yeah. Ultimately you want to be able to see it just from your vision, but your vision can sometimes be skewed, whether by the height or like some other thing. So like knowing for sure like can help the process and can help you doing the jump. Like if you don't do the jump just because you're like, oh, I didn't want to measure it, then I think that's I don't know, I think that's like cutting it short.
I wonder sometimes if people like avoid measuring it because you can give yourself a false confidence when you measure something.
Yeah.
Because it can be like, I know that I can jump this far, therefore I can do the jump, when there's something more complex about it that actually
for sure. Like either the run up or like a thin takeoff or something, for example. But yeah, I guess you just have to be like logical and rational about it, like every aspect of it. Like
you have to.
Of course, it doesn't work on like high to low or low to high kind of things, and there are so many different things. But
so do you have that mapped out? Like, okay, so you can do a certain standing precision jump on the ground, and if it's a 2-foot drop or a 3-foot drop or a 4-foot drop, do you have an intuitive sense of how much further you can get, or do you have you actually mapped that out?
I don't think I map it out. But I think now and again I'll come to a jump and if like I'll think like, oh, I think I'm pretty sure I know how far this is, like by feet.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure like I can do this with like how many steps run up or something, or whether it's like I can do it standing, or whether I can do it with a step in, or like a few steps running, or like full pelt running kind of thing. But sometimes, so I have an idea of like what jumps I can do with what, but sometimes it's nice to like measure it out just to confirm like how accurate my vision is. And I think my vision is getting like more and more accurate as time goes on. So like I think that's also like testament to like how measuring stuff can be like helpful to solidifying your vision and like trusting your vision, if you know what I mean. Absolutely. I don't know. I think I've bollocksed up explaining.
No, I think that's a great explanation. I just read this book called Super Forecasting by Philip Tetlock. It's a great book, but for some reason that one pops in my mind. But one of the ideas here is that when you explicitly measure your ability to accurately predict something, then you give yourself feedback on how well you're doing it. So if you look at a jump and you think to yourself, okay, that jump is 12 feet, and then you measure it out and it is 12 feet, it's like, well, that's information, right? If it looks like 12 feet and it was 13 feet, then you know that you made an error.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to be calibrating your ability to. So basically, you have an intrinsic sense of how far you can jump and an intrinsic ability to measure something. Yeah. And then by bringing that up and saying, if you can say to yourself, I think this, and then you measure it and you're either right or wrong, that's information that helps you you can ask, why didn't I get that right? And then you can get better at that process, and you slowly hone in that vision. I think that you're right that having a measuring tool can really help you kind of tune your and help you calibrate your intrinsic knowledge.
I think so. I mean, like the third way to like calibrate it would be by actually doing the jump and then like finding out, oh, I was a bit wrong. Like I bounced off that and I thought it was like within my range, but sometimes you can't afford to do that bounce off, or you can't afford to get it wrong. So it's best to, especially with like, say for example, the jump I did in Hong Kong. I didn't want to do that jump without measuring it, because that would mean I would die if I'd got it wrong. So I made sure my vision wasn't skewed by anything. Like most likely, like I would think it's bigger because of the height, but yeah, if it was the other way, then it would have been different.
In order to give yourself the confidence, you needed to have as much information confirming as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
This brings up another thing that I talk about, which is this idea of I use the terms risk versus danger, and I'm curious if you guys use something similar or have developed the same concept. But basically, I think of risk as the likelihood that something will fail,
and the consequence being like the objective
danger.
Outcome.
Exactly. And so
if you were to succumb to that risk,
you're talking about doing
the other side of the risk.
Exactly. So risk is how likely is it to fail. Danger is what happens if you fail. So like, your danger level on that Hong Kong jump was 100. It was like, if you fail, you die. I suppose there were like, you could bounce off forwards into the building and could have been ugly. And you could
like there could have been like a lot of saves that would have but still,
So there's a couple questions there. So first is, how do you guys think about that risk management aspect, and like how much, how close to the edge of what you're capable of do you feel like you can control at a point where you're in very high danger? Like the jump in Hong Kong, if that had been at the ground level, would that have been a very easy jump to work yourself up to? Or
for sure, like nothing. I think we say it in Roof Culture Asia as well, in the full documentary, that nothing that we actually did was physically or technically hard. It was just mentally very scary. So it was just like tuning into like the physical and technical side of things. So I would say that jump, it was 16 foot, and I would have, like, maybe 1,000 out of 1,000 times would have nailed it on the ground without a problem.
That's fine. That's my rule personally for myself when I jump at height. People will say, "Oh, I think I can do it," and I also go like, "Can you fail?" Because when you're at height, it's like it only takes one failure. So if you're playing around at a failure rate of like anything over 0, basically, eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, playing with time, and especially like the volume of how many times you're doing stuff like that, which is what scares me about so many people doing descents these days, for example, because it's not only like one movement. You're going down an entire parking garage, which is like, and then when people are trying to do it fast for the videos and everything, so it's like a risky move multiplied by however many stories. Of course, the consequence is getting a little bit lower each story you descend down. But I think why it's dangerous is, like, you can say, oh yeah, but I don't do it until like I've fully tested everything and like got all the data I need to like to know that I can do it without failure. But I think the thing is, everyone's perception of that is slightly different. So for example, like on the scale of things, someone could be a lot more careless than someone else.
Yeah.
So like their idea of no stones unturned is very different from someone who is like super careful and like wouldn't even do the descent kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why like people like I don't want to say like Joe Scandrett, but like I know Joe is like so like gung ho and like I don't know, he's somewhat like a bit careless sometimes, and he does bail quite often, like and he does a lot of fucking scary descents. Like he does like 9 stories, and on one of them I've seen like when he's like been 3 stories up or something, he's like caught from a drop cat and then slid all the way down to like his chest.
Yeah.
And so I think he's a bit more, and there are a lot of people that are like that for sure. And when you enter like, when you put a trend like that, like descents into the parkour community, then like more people are going to want to do it to like prove themselves or whatever. And I don't know, something like descents, I feel like some bad shit's going to happen in the hands of like someone who isn't as careful as they should be, if you know what I mean. Because everyone's perception of like, yeah, I'm ready is different.
Yeah, and whenever we're doing something new, also, we're not familiar yet with what the dangers are.
Yeah.
Right. So as something like descents come into the culture, it's like, well, nobody was really doing them. You know, it's like there's the famous David Bell descent in Lease, right?
Yeah.
Like they have that series of drops between the walls, but it feels like to me, people really doing this as a kind of high prestige, really kind of exploration area in parkour started just like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It was like, I think it was Dylan Baker and in Colorado, and then it's like, it's pretty much Colorado and now the UK. It seems like where it's big.
Yeah, and now it's everyone's doing them.
But I mean, you know, I've been exploring things along those lines in trees. Like, how do I get down quickly through trees? There's one that I was just looking at in Copenhagen, where I could stand in one tree, which is like 30 plus feet off the ground, 10 plus meters off the ground, jump across to another tree, but the first branch is like this.
Yeah, okay.
And then you have to turn and like slide backwards and catch on these branches and then turn around. And then at that point, you're pretty safe. You're not too high off the ground. But then there's a sweet like swing down to another tree branch and then a huge precision off of it.
That sounds so cool.
I know. Like, I want to go back and do it really bad. But I love that stuff. It's really interesting. In the trees, it's really interesting. But you don't find stuff that's as exposed a lot in a tree as, you know, a parking garage where, like, you know, if you fall backwards, you're just gone. There's nothing to catch.
Yeah. At least like there's a lot more variables of and there's a lot of, it's not so copy and paste in trees and stuff, but at least like you've got like a few branches to like catch you if you do mess up. Yeah, it's not so exposed.
So, but the hesitation that you express around kind of the rise of the descent culture is something, you know, other people have talked about what you guys are doing in the same kind of way, right?
Yeah.
You're famous for the whole idea of roof culture.
Yeah.
Like the very early parkour community did these roof gaps, and then
it's nothing new. Like
that's
the thing that people keep forgetting. Like
it's not new, but it is. You're the first guys to sort of like kind of make a distinct subculture around that.
Sure.
You know, David Bell didn't have T-shirts about manpower.
Yeah. For sure.
I like, it's interesting for me because when I started parkour in the States here, a lot of people were first it was like, okay, well, actually, you can do a lot of this on the ground. First, it was all, like, we got to get up on rooftops and do flips off things. And then people realized that, most of the practice was something you can do on the ground. And then as we became organized as a community, it was really kind of looked down on to do stuff on roofs.
Yeah.
And to do drops, right? Everyone was getting knee pain. So
yeah, it's so funny because like the majority of content that you'd see like back in the day was just that, like roof stuff and drops. It's like, oh.
And then
everyone. I remember. Yeah.
And so we cultivated this whole other culture around it. And like I came in and I was very cautious, and I came from a gymnastics background, a strength and conditioning background. And I actually never explored roofs while I was doing urban parkour. It wasn't until I started training primarily in nature that I really started playing with doing stuff at height where there were serious consequences. So anyways, I remember kind of the reaction to you guys kind of putting up this roof culture idea. And I know in roof culture Asia, you talked about the idea that people need to realize that this is a process that's taken seriously by the people who do it, and it's not something to be easily replicated. And I think there's an interesting thing to think about when you are, let's say, doing stuff on the edge of what humans have mapped out.
Yeah,
you guys are taking the roof training to an edge that maybe hasn't really been as explored by anybody else. And that when you're on the edges, there's always a potential that you're flirting with danger, right? Because you don't have a lot of information about the way that that's done. And in the same way that like when the parkour idea was spread to the rest of the world, it's like we missed a ton of what was going on in the French scene. It's like what you guys are doing and what's allowing you to be safe when you're up there isn't necessarily obvious to the people who are following you. So how do you think about the responsibility as a member of the community for the fact that a lot of people are going to want to go up on roofs because they've watched what you've done?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard because I would say I'd like to say that's most of that idea is covered in Roof Culture Asia, but then like how many people that watch our videos are going to see and have seen Roof Culture Asia?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that needs to be said more often for sure in our videos. And I guess it helps more often now that a lot of our content is a lot more vlog based, so people can see the process that goes into how we prepare for jumps and everything like that. That's something we have a lot in our videos. So yeah, people can see that now. So that I guess there's that element of we're not just hucking shit. But yeah, I think there needs to be more to make it clear that we're not just going out. And I get a lot of my students as well. There have been. It's the fact that it is like sensationalized and everything, and a lot of my students are asking me for roof spots in Brighton and everything, and even my adult students as well, and I'm like, guys, you're fairly new to the sport, you have no place kind of adding high consequence to it, like just for social media or even for yourself, or like you need to put the work in beforehand to eliminate any risk. Like you can't say that there's no risk, or you can't say, oh, I'll be careful, because it's like, it doesn't matter how careful you are, your technique and skill, you haven't experienced enough mistakes at ground level to know what can happen with a high consequence scenario, if you know what I mean. I think I don't know, there needs to be more spoken about it. But then again, like that has always been a thing within parkour culture, like we were saying, it's always been there, like from the videos from the founders, and I don't know, not that many people have died thus far, where that has always been like an existing spectacle in the sport,
except in Russia.
I don't know. Oh yes, except for Powell Cashin, rest in peace.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
funny because, I don't think anybody has died directly from doing parkour in the States. I don't know what the situation is in England. My friend,
I don't really know.
who's from the Russian community, says it's happening there on a yearly basis.
Jesus, I heard another story about like some girl that died as well in Russia, but I'd never heard it confirmed, or didn't really hear any proper details as well. But really, a yearly basis. What kind of stuff have you heard?
It's just something I heard from a guy who's from Russia. But you see the videos that come out of Russia, and all the guys doing crane hangs and everything that's going on. The culture is very different there.
Yes, for sure. Like,
have you had a chance to go train over there?
Literally for a day. We bought some crap flights to Thailand when we went in 2015, and they went via Moscow.
Okay.
We even had to get like these fucking shit transit visas as well that cost us so much and cost so much time as well to get, just so we can get like these cheaper flights. But I think the money we had to pay like worked out more expensive anyway. But yeah, we pretty much spent like a day in Russia, so like pretty much a day layover. We had to like change airports and everything. But yeah, we didn't really meet many people, but I guess it's enough to see from videos how the mindset is just completely different.
Yeah, well, this friend of mine,
I still don't know why.
Went to train with Mustang. I think the guy's name's Mustang.
Okay, Mustang Wanted.
Yeah, he's one of the big like crane hangers, right?
Yeah, from I think Ukraine.
Yeah, but he was saying that like after they were training like parkour and like climbing and stuff, Mustang just wanted to go get in some street fights. It's like part of the culture. It was like normal, yeah. Like, oh, we just need to go find a street fight. So
I think Eric Mukameshin was saying more or less the same thing.
Yeah, you should ask Eric about that. Maybe I'm misrepresenting the situation. It was just something my friend Alex told me as a Russian kid. He trains parkour and came over here. So I want to get back away from the Russian thing. So here, I had this other question that came up to me recently, which is like, so I'm 36 now, and I didn't really start exploring doing stuff at heights until I was 31, 32. And I've slowly gotten more and more confident with it. And I've been, taking bigger jumps. I did a jump recently in Spain, which was like, I don't know, 60 feet off the ground between two cliffs. It's not a huge jump from it was probably a 10-foot gap or so, but with a nice like 6-foot drop. So it was pretty easy standing jump, but it was a scary, weird edged cliff face there. Like,
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that like, okay, because when I was doing urban parkour, I was always the leader of the local parkour community, and I was always kind of like a coach, and I didn't want to be arrested and have that like be affecting the perception of what of the parkour community for my students. So when I started training in nature, I was like, well, nobody's going to arrest me for jumping between two cliffs, so I can start exploring this. So I wanted to explore it, and I was like, I think that there's something for me to learn here, and I'll probably need to do this for a few years, and then I think that I'll be done with it, and then I'll put it away. And so I've gone and explored it more and more, and I found it really informational. Like there's something about the process of breaking the jump that I think is profoundly building of your character, and it's a really interesting place to examine your fear, and it taps into some, it allows you to enter the flow state in a really powerful way when you can connect.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit addictive. So I guess I'm 3 or 4 years into the process of exploring this. I definitely don't feel ready to stop anytime soon.
Sure.
And and the stuff that we see in general, outside of my personal process of parkour, is that it's getting crazier and crazier. A guy I follow, Leo Urban, just did a front flip over the manpower gap.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sick. I didn't know he'd done. Awesome. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot. So
you can see stuff like that happening, and I see people throwing double fronts outside now. That's happening regularly. And so far, it seems like the parkour community has stayed really safe. Like people often ask me, "How it's so dangerous, such a crazy sport." But in my experience, most elite parkour athletes that I've worked with actually have fairly minimal injury histories and have had few major like life scares. Whereas when I talk to like elite skiers and snowboarders, like they're just a laundry list of horrible injuries that happen.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. But I wonder if, the sport is evolving to the point where it's going to start being dangerous to stay at the edge of what people are doing.
Yeah.
I was reading this book, The Rise of Superman. They're talking about like Dean Potter was one of the characters, right?
Yeah, I've read the same book.
Yeah. And, the coda to that book is Dean died, right? He died doing wingsuiting. So I'm curious, do you have that sense that like that your friends, the people who are pushing the edge of this sport, are starting to flirt with danger? Do you still feel like it's just people are that fucking amazing, and that now front flipping the manpower gap is just a thing? It's not a crazier thing than jumping it was 5 years ago.
I think that example specifically, I think isn't. I mean, that's down to like a gap like that is down to like takeoff kind of thing, rather than I don't know, like in terms of like the high consequence of it, like. But yeah, I think I feel like for the most part, as things are progressing right now, is pretty all right. Maybe apart from like I express worries about like descents and stuff, but maybe because that's such a new thing, it hasn't been explored as deep as like some of the other stuff for most people, if you know what I mean. But I can't say that I've seen too many people like pushing it at their very limits and the outcome being hurting themselves like that much. I don't think I've seen like more and more of that happening. Do you feel that?
I don't spend that much time with the parkour community, right? Like I'm a married guy with 3 kids who trains, with my students and on my own a lot. I love it when I get a chance to train with the parkour community, because it's kind of, there's nobody in the natural movement community, kind of people who are following in the footsteps of what I'm doing, and other people have blazed who have yet managed to reach the skill level that I have, or not very many.
Sure.
So if I want somebody who can jump and do the same kind of stuff in the trees as I do, it's usually somebody in the parkour community. So it's hard for me to tell. I'm just curious because I read that book, and I do know that some of the other communities that has gone in a crazy direction. And parkour has always seemed a little bit different to me, because you basically only move at the speed that the body can allow. So as long as you don't take a drop from height, you're relatively controlled. But I guess the thing that I'm a little bit scared of is all the double flipping. And as people try to connect that and do it in more complex environments, just because I came from gymnastics and I knew that like a lot of people have got hurt in gymnastics with double flips, especially double front flips. So I can imagine if someone's foot slips out on setting out for a double front flip.
I think I did a Callum tip 100 was actually like it was a long-winded thing about I called it hucking shit. Hucking shit being like the dangers of hucking shit becoming like a big part of parkour culture. And I think at the time, some people, like there was a lot of bails happening, like including like Dom Tommaso doing like some crazy flip prees that like it didn't seem like there was any. He was like taking leaps in his progression. There wasn't like any steady steps to it, and like the consequence of that was like he bailed like the first 2 attempts, and then like the one that he did get finally wasn't like nice, as in like it didn't look comfortable at all. And there was like loads of stuff around that time happening, and I pretty much just I was pretty much saying, like, if stuff carries on like this, it's going to become like FMX and skateboarding and stuff, where like all the top athletes are held together by like nails and glue and stuff. And pretty much like, did you ever read Blaine's Dilution?
Yeah.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago or something, 12
Yeah,
years ago. It was pretty much like that sort of thing, but aimed at, it's so funny how it's like still that kind of thing is still about.
Yeah, that's always a question, you know. I mean, people are coming in from other sports. They have different backgrounds. You know, going back to that idea that they're talking about the rise of Superman, it's like the rise of parkour is like a unique historical thing because no other, well, I mean, I guess tricking and some of the other sports that have arisen at the same time, but like previous to this, like skateboarding, snowboarding, skiing, martial arts, they didn't get to spread as rapidly because they didn't have YouTube.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely plays a part in it, and Instagram as well. Like I think the sport kind of evolves as a collective, like some hive mind. I hate saying it. What is it? Collective consciousness kind of thing. Like so many people are pushing like side flip precisions to like a crazy level, for example. And I don't know, like people see trends and go.
Yeah, we're all sort of networking our brains through social media. It's really interesting to me to see like how things come and go as trends. Like I was just like wondering the other day, like what happened to angel drops and devil drops? He does worm casts and you know, palm gainers and stuff like that, but you never see anybody do an angel drop or a devil drop anymore.
Yeah, true.
So for the audience, if you guys don't know, an angel drop is from hanging on a wall with your feet on the wall, and what we call a cat leap. It's doing a backflip off of it, and a devil drop would be the opposite, and the front flip off of it. These were popular, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. I remember Chase Armitage was like the first guy who did them.
Yeah, maybe a bit longer than that ago. Yeah, I remember.
And then it's like I swear I haven't seen anybody do that in a video in ages.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. Huh.
But like every video has like every free runner now has a worm cast or a worm gainer.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's kind of like the same thing as an angel drop, only you're not pushing off of your feet, you're just worming your body from a full hang.
Yeah. There are so many different trends that are like you start seeing them, and then a month later, because of Instagram, like there are dozens and dozens of people doing them.
Yeah, so we have this.
Yeah, it's so strange.
This massive advantage on people in the past because we can watch images and we can map it in our own minds of people doing skills faster than anybody else. But I also think it makes it harder to sort of recognize what's really particularly interesting to you. Do you feel that? Like, you know, when you absorb what everybody else in the community is doing, it's like you naturally end up wanting to replicate that, and then it changes the way that you see the space and your own relationship to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've found that with myself for sure. Yeah.
You see some athletes who like end up having really unique styles, and it feels like they're siloed and just kind of doing their own thing in a corner. Like video that comes to mind is, I think his name is Nim from the Berlin scene. You know, just playing on a series of rails. You know the video?
Yeah, I know.
And it's interesting how you see those athletes who pop out with their very unique styles, and then it gets picked up and propagated to the community.
But then again, I think like you never get like an exact copy of that. Like people take it and then they put like ideas into their own kind of style, and I don't know, it's not like an exact forgery. It's like kind of like an interpretation of like ideas, and then if I explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that there's a tendency though for people, like I think people are really social, and so social stuff motivates us, but I think it also can blind us to what's personally motivating to us.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
And so I think that I feel like a lot of times the people who burn out are the people who who sort of spend all their time replicating what they see and don't
Yeah.
find their own relationship with the discipline.
It's more like what motivates them,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
if you're just like happy just doing you and like progressing with what motivates you rather than what people want to see, then I think you're more likely to kind of last, maybe.
Yeah. I wanted to go back a second and talk about like quantum leaps in skill, or things where like we talked about this idea. You were talking about Dom Tomasi, and so how he was making big jumps, right? Where maybe it's a side flip pre to a big fat wall today, and then tomorrow it's a side flip pre to a rail.
Yeah, for sure. And my problem with that was it works for him because somehow not with his recent front flip when he did the 25 set in Lyon, because he busted his foot pretty bad, but most of the time he's made of something different, and he's but if that catches on culturally, like hucking culture becomes a thing, then more and more people decide to take these big quantum leaps.
Yeah. Have you ever had moments?
There'll be more injuries. Sorry?
Have you had moments in your practice like that, though, where you saw something that was sort of outside the scope of anything that you've done that was similar, but you had that moment of saying, no, I really know that I can do this right now, and been able to do it?
Not really. I don't get that very often. I'm really fucking careful.
Okay.
I'm really cautious, which is probably like not what so many people think. But yeah, I don't know. Like whenever the guys are doing shit with, like, for example, like a rope swing, or like I'll like stand back and kind of like watch how it works for everyone else first, and then I'll still be like kind of terrified when it's my turn to go. Anything that's like unpredictable and without, I don't know, having practiced it a bunch before, like or like a different version of it, like on a smaller scale, I'll be, I don't know, like very scared of, kind of thing, which I think is a good place to be, but I think maybe it can also like box you in a bit and keep you to your comfort zone too much. But I think you've got to, I don't know, build up always, otherwise I don't know.
It's just interesting because I've had a couple moments in my practice recently where things that they didn't make sense to me, how I knew I was ready for them, happened. So I was telling you earlier about that jump in Hampstead Heath. There's from a 14-foot high branch down to an 8-foot high branch, and I, the closest jump that I'd done was maybe 11 feet with a 3-foot drop, like 3 feet off the ground. And it was interesting because, like, physically I knew I had the power as soon as I looked at it, but I'd never done anything that was sufficiently similar enough to make me feel like I could play out in my head what was going to happen when I did the jump.
Yeah.
And I was able to just kind of push through that. And then this other experience was kind of weird. Like, I didn't really do much acrobatics for a long time. And then for some reason I was out in the woods and I saw this chance to flip between this trunk and a tree off of like a tack front through it. And I hadn't done a tack front in like 2 years. And I had to step up off of a log and do it. But it felt pretty safe. It was not like super crazy. So
that's the thing as well. Like, I'm sorry, carry on.
So I did it, and then I was just in Denmark, and I found this spot where there's one tree that's going up like this, like one tree that's sloping forwards away from you, and one tree that's sloping backwards towards you, and then they meet, and there's a little spot that you can go over in the middle. And I realized that you could front flip through it, and it was really strange to me because it just didn't feel like something I'd done, but I felt like my body knew how to do it and was able to do it. And so that felt like a little bit of a quantum leap in skill. And so I've been thinking about, like, what prepares you to notice that you're able to do something that's far outside the scope of what you've done in the past, and how do you how do you like know to trust that, and then to let go of the other information that might tell you, no, you've never done anything similar to this. That was what I was asking you about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's ever been anything similar for me, but I think there's definitely like down to the consequence involved. Like,
Yeah, that's big.
of course, like if you're, like, say the first time you want to try a gainer or something, if you're doing that into a foam pit, like the risk of you fucking it up are very high because it's your first time and you don't really know the mechanics of it. But the risk is, but the consequence is very low. So you can kind of, you can go for it.
So that actually brings up this other thing that was interesting. You're talking about the idea that, when you see something new, like a swing, you're one of the more cautious guys in getting into it.
Yeah. Like for example, something that's like more unpredictable and like completely out of my skill set, or something like a rope swing or whatever.
Yeah. So it is something that I've been working on a lot, that we kind of touched on earlier in the conversation, but I have this idea of aliveness as applied to parkour. And this is kind of similar to Amos Rendell, and I talked about this idea of randori for parkour. So it's like,
yeah,
can you do something not when you've pre-planned it, but when you have to do it reactively? There's a distinction in kind of motor control between volitional, like where you intentionally decide, I'm going to pick this up, right? And reflexive, where it starts to drop from your hand unexpectedly and you have to grab it. So reflexive versus volitional. And and what I've been playing with a lot is ways to sort of get, I think that a lot of times parkour athletes are really stuck in the volitional aspect of their training. So they're you're going to do your dash vault to Kong Pre to front tuck. And if the dash vault doesn't feel just right, you just stop and start over.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
If the footwork isn't perfect on the run up, you just stop.
You can't carry on. Yeah. You can't improvise and work with it.
And so there's often an inability to improvise. So what we've done a lot is, like, play games of chase, play games of like, we'll chase each other around with a stick and have to avoid the stick.
Okay.
Or we'll climb through trees, and we've invented a game called Monkey Ball, where you're trying to like basically score through a gap in the trees, but you have to be in the tree the whole time. So you're moving through a series of trees.
Okay.
And you can't move forward when you have the ball. So you have your teammates and they're moving through the trees and you have to throw it to them, and then you have to move and catch up.
I've done something similar, like the floor is lava thing on the. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen like the black and yellow bar structure that I teach on. Yeah, I do a similar thing.
I probably haven't. Some of your videos.
Doesn't matter if you haven't seen, but I do the same game. But but that'd be sick to do that on a natural environment. Sure.
It's super fun.
And then the other person has to overtake, and then the other person that's holding the ball can't move until they get ahead, and then.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other team is there trying to interrupt it. They can't touch the players, but they can knock the ball down.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. I see. That's another cool level to add to it. Sick.
Yeah, super fun game. Monkey Ball, so you all can try that. So I was just curious if you've noticed this distinction between that, and if you see that people who do more of the training in a reactive way are better able to solve those challenges earlier, rather than having to go through the very cautious sort of patterned way of approaching it.
I remember me and some friends used to kind of do that, like a bit, like we're going to just like move through this environment without like prepping it or anything. It'll be like a place that we've trained before, but like it'll be a path, like I choose a direction, like randomly, and then just improvise kind of thing. But I don't know. I haven't really played with that since.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you obviously, when you're at the hardest edge of your technical ability, you have to take that really sort of cautious and very thoughtful approach to it. But sure. I think that when you start building up that ability to reactively control things, it builds your confidence. Going back to another point of the conversation, my mind's all over the place, but You talked about when you were doing the big jump in Hong Kong, that you had certain that you had ways that it could go wrong without you dying.
Yeah.
So how do you think about when you're at the kind of doing these really challenging jumps? How do you look at for the ways that you could control the situation? Like, how do you map out all those potentials? What were you thinking you could have happen and you would still survive it, other than landing it perfectly?
That's when like your experience just training without high consequence is useful, because you know how things can go wrong and how you can save things when they aren't like the most ideal scenario or whatever. So like obviously missing the takeoff, that you can't really come back from that. Like there's not, especially on like a 16-foot running jump, there's not really ways you can come back from that. So like number one priority is always getting the takeoff right, and then worrying about landing, kind of thing. And then there's like just like how you can bounce off it if you were to undershoot, for example, and how you would react like if you, I don't know, undershot in like some other way. These are all things that are like kind of part of my process with anything at high consequence or even like slightly lower consequence at ground level. Like I'm always wondering, how am I gonna save this if it doesn't go exactly the plan, and like how many ways can it kind of go wrong as well, kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah, this part of the process, I think.
I think about when you're kind of, when you're breaking a jump, it's like first you're looking at the jump and decide you do it, then that you can do it, then you assess it, and then you have to overcome your fear of it and like get to the point where you can commit. And then part of that is like visualizing all the ways that it could happen. Yeah. And figuring out what is the stuff that I most need to concentrate on, like the takeoff.
Yeah. It's good to have like an idea of like how you were to react. Like for example, if you're doing a jump in a tree and there's like some branch that can save you underneath, or there's an awkward like stump that can go up your ass or something. Like if you were to bounce off, like like the less than ideal scenarios like should be like really important to think about. So you know how you're going to react. So they need to be like in the back of your mind, or even the front of your mind.
Yeah, there's this thinker in movement theory called Nikolai Bernstein who had this idea of the degrees of freedom problem. So you can think of all the different things that could happen as degrees of freedom. So then so the original idea is that, well, there's one right way to do it, right? So you want to get rid of all the other ways of doing it. But then what he pointed out is there's lots of ways that don't result in failure, and you want to be able to keep all the redundant variables that are that don't result in failure, right? So the example that you could give is like, let's say that you have one finger on a force plate or two fingers on a force plate, and the total force has to be 5, or it has to be 10 pounds of force. So you can push down with 5 pounds of force on one and 5 pounds of force on the other. You can say that's the correct solution. You try to do exactly that. But then any deviation away from that results in failure, right? But if you realize that 1 plus 4 or 1 plus 9 is the same, and right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then you have all these redundant degrees of what could happen, that as long as you're within that, you're safe. Does that make sense? I think we go through a lot of the same process when we're doing these jumps at height. It's basically like, here's the thing that I really, really don't want to have happen. Here's all the things that would be less bad than that. Yeah. I'm going to aim to do it in such a way that it's always going to result in something that's not the worst possible option.
Yeah.
So when you're up there looking at that jump in Hong Kong, how do you kind of regulate your nervous system so that you know when you're ready to go, and that you're not overly tense or out of control?
I don't know, to be honest. I never really, I can't remember many times when I felt like overly too tense for something, or like adrenal or whatever. But I guess if I did have any things like that, I would definitely see it as like a sign to kind of slow down, chill out, kind of thing. Or but I remember when I did go for the jump in Hong Kong, I was like, I'd got to a point where I felt like I had like everything I needed. And I felt like if so long as I get this awkward run up right and get a good takeoff, like there's nothing bad that's going to go wrong. And it took a long time to get to that point, and it was literally just like a technical kind of thing. Like mentally, I wasn't so worried about it. I just knew that I had to work it out and take all the steps towards it, kind of thing. Yeah. So I don't know I think that one isn't like the best example. I think I can't remember ever having experiences like that where I've been like, whoa, I need to calm down, kind of thing. Or
I've noticed that.
But yeah, maybe I've just never been mindful of it enough.
Yeah, I've noticed that most of the best athletes that I see doing stuff at height, or even doing anything that's really hard and technical, you'll see them exhale and shake a little bit before they take off. So people,
yeah.
Which is interesting because I see a lot of young guys who are not experienced basically doing the opposite to themselves, because those are calming signals. So those are turning your nervous system down.
They have their favorite trap song in their ear, and their friends are hyping them up.
Exactly.
Let's get this shit.
Yeah. Always looks terrible. Whenever someone,
it might work for going for like a new like 1 rep max PR in the gym or something.
But you just know that guy's gonna, if he makes it, it's just gonna look horrible. It's gonna be a bad movement.
Yeah.
So what is it like? What is your internal signal that you know you're ready for something?
Often just things just feel right, like I have everything, all the data that I need, kind of thing.
So it's a feeling of that you know what you need to know.
Yeah, like I know enough. Like
I've noticed with like standing jumps at height, I literally have a feeling that my eye focuses more effectively on the object, and everything else blurs more, like a camera. Yeah. Because it's like as long as I'm too afraid, and I'm the stuff down below, the fall will attract my attention, and as long as that's sort of eating in my head, then I'm not ready to jump. But once I can kind of let that drift into like a really fuzzy background and my eyes lock in, then I know I'm ready to jump.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, that's so weird. I need to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. The process of how we control these things, psychologically and physiologically.
Yeah. Definitely something I need to pay attention to more.
Yeah.
Because there always is like a switch.
Yeah.
When breaking a jump, like, or a mental block or something, and then I don't know.
Yeah, I think having that for me, it seems like having that really mapped out and knowing exactly what that process is really helps you not make a mistake.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you have it well articulated. I learned a lot about it from Stefan Vibro. Did a whole thing on breaking the jump when he came out here to teach, and also Dylan Baker. So I want to talk to you also. I know that you do some weightlifting as well, which is when I was more involved in the parkour community, it seemed like a lot of the kind of the top guys who didn't do weightlifting, didn't really do much other than parkour. So I'm curious to what degree you see people now adopting that, and what importance do you place on kind of ancillary strength conditioning, body preparation training for parkour athletes?
I'd be interested to hear like what percentage of importance like people put to that, because although I do quite a lot of it, I still place most importance on like technical and mental training rather than just like purely physical. I mean, I started lifting in maybe 2009 after seeing pretty much after hearing that it's good for your joints and it pretty much keeps knee pain at bay and everything. I heard from like Bobby and Tague around the time, who both like had knee pain. I had a lot of friends that were dropping like a lot of friends that were dropping like flies with knee pain, and I just got a bit paranoid about it pretty much. So like I started lifting for that, and then like later on I hear like that strength is really good, like building that strength is really good for like building power and everything, and that's definitely something I felt as well. And now I think most of the time I'm lifting with the intention of building power and resistance to impact and everything. And I mean, like, and of course the longevity thing is a really good byproduct of that, I guess. But like, I think in my mind, it's kind of like a byproduct.
So your primary goal with your training is to increase your ability to apply power.
My primary goal in lifting is to increase my power, but
so you can jump further and land.
Yeah, pretty much. Like so I can feel like I'm at my peak physically when doing like a lot of the jumps, but I still place like most importance on technical training and mental training. Well, not even the mental training, but just like within parkour, like that stuff I put more value on.
So you noticed an increase in your power when you started weight training?
Yeah, for sure. Like whenever I'm lifting consistently, I always feel really strong and can jump like more than without.
Okay,
sure.
And how much? How can you train when you are training? Like when you are training, how many days a week do you train? What kind of volume do you use? Like what kind of training do you use?
I think in winter I'll have 2 sessions a week, and then normally like an hour long, and sometimes I'll do like 5 sets of squats and then 5 sets of Bulgarian split squats or something on each leg, and then sometimes I'll mix like some fast lifting stuff. Like I used to do a lot more like Olympic lifting kind of stuff. And I'll usually, I mean, for the past 3 years, I've been trying to like superset that sort of stuff with like plyometric movements.
Yeah, French contrast
as well. Like only really recently like French contrast, but like normally just like say like back squat followed by like a plyo in like a broad jump plyo into like a box jump. Or if like Bulgarian split squats, then I'll just do like just like strides down a track, like
bounding, what they would call it in track and field.
Bounding.
I do similar stuff when I weight train. I usually do Bulgarian split squats and combine with that, or I do front squats with broad jump series. So very similar stuff. I ask because I think one thing that I've noticed with the parkour community is that if you take a standard lifting program, it's usually too much volume for a parkour athlete. The amount of damage that we're taking, to the muscular system from the jumping training. Do 3 days a week of 3x5. It just ends up being too much. So I was curious to find out what you're doing. And then like, how much do you think that increases your power or your resilience when you're out training? Like 10%, 15%, like what advantage do you think you're getting?
I'm not sure, because I've never taken such a hiatus that I've noticed like any problems or anything, if you know what I mean. But then I've never had like such a long time consistently lifting, like no more than like 6 or 8 weeks consistently lifting to like pretty much plateau. Like I don't think I've ever lifted consistently enough to plateau.
Okay.
So it's hard to like put any like number to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then still I wouldn't be certain whether it was down to the intensity or volume of how I'd be like technical training, like jumping and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to be a good scientist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Imagine, especially with the kind of schedule that you're doing for all the filming. And
yeah.
Do you program your jump training at all, or is your parkour training basically just whatever feels good that day?
Yeah, pretty much. I do sometimes put aside days to drill stuff for sure, like with the intention of building power.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, yeah, I'll just jump around and have fun, especially with technical training days. But yeah, in the gym, I'll do like some jumps up the track and sometimes just like repping out precisions and stuff just for like endurance and like resilience kind of thing. Not so much like the technique.
Do you usually have kind of a set of goals you're working towards, or is it more in any given session you just find something you want to work
on? I think my goals, I have a long list of goals actually, which are like, I have a list of like 70 different jumps and challenges that and a lot of them I've ticked off and a lot of them I haven't. So a lot of my goals are kind of location based, like they're like, say, like a stride at IMAX or something, or like blah 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 at mini spot or whatever. Like it's always spot based. And I don't know. But then I also have like, and on the same like notepad, I have like lifting goals, conditioning goals, flexibility goals and stuff. I write down shit a lot. So yeah, I guess sometimes when it feels right, I'll like focus on doing like one of these goals or whatever. I don't know. I can't remember if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. It's I was just trying to get at, I think that a lot of times the athletes who are kind of at the edges of what people are doing from a kind of performance standpoint, not necessarily communicating what's happening in their practice in a way that people can understand. So part of my goal in interviewing you
I know what you mean,
is to kind of give people a window into what that practice looks like and how it's cultivated and built up. So
what's funny about my list as well is like, it's got underneath some of the jumps and stuff, I have like specific things that would directly make that jump easier, whether that be like practicing like drilling a jump that's like very similar, or jumps that are similar, or like doing hill sprints or something to like improve, or like Bulgarian split squats or whatever. I have like bullet points under each, like some of the goals and stuff, for example.
Mine is pretty similar. I have like generally a list of specific movements that I want to do. Like I have a really big canyon jump that I want to do. I have a series of swings around a tree that I want to do. I have a front flip in between two trees and over another tree branch that I want to do. And then I kind of have intermediate goals that take me towards that. It's like, I know that I'm this much more ready when I've done this. It's like, in order to do that canyon jump, this canyon jump I want to do is 16 feet with like a 7-foot drop, but you can't roll.
Damn.
You're landing on a boulder. And so I'm like, well, my legs have to be really good at stopping a 16 feet jump. Going just to a local park and jumping, 16 feet with a 3-foot drop into the bark dust, and just seeing how well my legs can control it. And it's amazing how hard just stopping a jump is when you're taking on that much power. So we had a little technical hiccup there, but that was actually probably a good place for us to stop on the role of strength training there in parkour. So Callum, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. For people who are interested in learning more about you and Storror, and where should they find you guys? And do you guys have any interesting things coming up that people should know about?
You can find us at Storror on Instagram or Storror on YouTube and Facebook and everything else. My personal is Callum Storror on Instagram, and something new. We're doing a TED talk in India actually.
Really?
Flying out on Friday, which is pretty funny. Drew has been working really hard to like finalize this talk, and now he's got him and Benj are going to deliver it in front of like an auditorium full of like 1,000 people or something. So that's going to be crazy. And then it's gone on YouTube, of course. So yeah, no pressure. And we've literally just gotten back from working on a film in Rome, which is like a new Netflix original film with Michael Bay, which is crazy. And yeah, that's
What's the name of the film?
Yeah.
Do you know the name of the film?
6 Underground. Yeah.
6 Underground. So people should look out for you guys in 6 Underground.
Yeah. No idea when it's going to be out, but it should be crazy.
Okay. Well, that'll be rad. I hope it doesn't blow you all up.
Yeah. It was close calls, for sure.
Okay. Cool, man. Thanks very much.
Yes. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve Move Play podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave a review on iTunes if you can. Finally, as we mentioned before the show, this is a listener-supported podcast, and if you want to have the most regular content, have the best guests on, and give you guys the best quality of audio and video, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Thank you very much, and I look forward to sharing more with you guys soon.